Tonight's episode of Cooking with Crime, we'll be discussing Andrei Chikatilo, the Butcher of Rostov. Andrei was born October 16, 1936. He was born in a tiny hut in the middle of the Soviet Union during the Russian famine. He lived on a collective farm, and if you didn't work on a collective farm, you got killed. He was extremely poor and always hungry. He only ate tree bark, leaves, and grass. He never even had bread until he was 12 years old. He was 5 years old when the Nazis occupied Ukraine. He witnessed German soldiers rape his mom. Him and his mom would hide in ditches because the soldiers would actually break into the huts, rape, raid, and murder the civilians. Andre had a swollen belly due to malnutrition, and he'd get bullied at school for it. And because of his malnutrition, every time he'd get worked up, he would actually just faint. So he's just fainting all the time, just fainting. When he was 17, he realized that he couldn't get a boner. His very first sexual experience was when he punched his sister's friend in the face and wrestled with her to the ground and ejaculated into his pants. In 1963, Chikatilo got married and had 2 kids. Yeah, I know. What about his whole penile problem? He'd actually go into the other room, masturbate into his hand, and shove it up his wife's vagina. His first murder was December 22nd, 1978. A 9-year-old girl who he lured back to his hut and attempted to rape her. When he couldn't get it up, he got mad, so he stabbed her 3 times, ejaculated, and realizes that she's not dead and continues to choke her, then disposes of her body in the river. One thing about Chikatilo is he is actually extremely sloppy and would leave evidence everywhere. There were witnesses who seen him and called the police. The police arrested Chikatilo, took him back to the station to collect blood to see if it was a match to the semen. It was not, because his semen type was AB, while his saliva type was type A. During Chikatilo's killing spree, he would go on to kill 53 more victims. He had no MO. He didn't care if you were male, female, child, elderly. He just didn't care. In the violence, it would only escalate. He would disembowel his victims and leave them in the forest to bleed out. He would cut out their tongue and lips and gnaw on them. He would dance around you while you are still alive, laying there completely disemboweled, leaving them with 22 to 65 stab wounds. Chikatilo would stop killing for a year here and there just to mess with the police. The Soviet Union would actually torture people until they confessed. So now we have multiple people confessing to these crimes and getting shot and killed over these crimes, and the crimes just keep happening. Now his killings are getting even more violent. Now he's mutilating his victims with his teeth and taking female parts home with him. They found kids disemboweled, boys castrated with their penises shoved into their mouth. He would also take out their eyeballs because of a weird Russian superstition. So the Soviet Union just can't admit that Russia has a serial killer until the murders start happening in Moscow as well. They hired a doctor who made up an extraordinary profile, and they searched up everyone with type A blood, where Chikatilo was spotted looking suspicious at a train station after he just killed his last victim at the airport. The officer asked for his ID, looked it over, and let him go. He got a call on the radio about the woman found at the airport, checked the list for the possible suspects, and Andrei Chikatilo was on the list. He was unaware that he was actually being followed by police when police witnessed him dry humping kids and women on the bus. He was then arrested and brought to the KGB. The doctor who made the profile placed it in front of Andrei Chikatilo, and Chikatilo read it word for word, and in 2 hours he was crying and confessing to everything. Chikatilo was convicted of 52 of 53 murders and served 52 life terms. On February 14th, 1994, an officer walked up behind him and shot him right behind the ear.